It was the end of the 5th grade and we were all excited for the school year to finally be over so we could enjoy a much needed summer break. I wasn't at all excited about the final few days of school. It wasn't that we had homework, because we didn't. And it wasn't because the days might have felt like they were going to drag on before the final bell rang to dismiss us. It wasn't that at all. It was because we had to attend summer camp for the last few days before school let out. You might be asking, what's the big deal? That doesn't sound that bad. Let me explain. Summer camp was like this in the 5th grade. It was you and students in the same grade from your class and another class taking an hour-long bus ride out to the middle of nowhere to sleep in musty cabins full of spiders and rodents. I was also extremely shy and didn't like the idea of sharing a cabin with other boys from another class that I probably didn't know. I always assumed they wouldn't like me, and at the end of the week would all probably end up beating the snot out of me or taking my clothes while I was in the shower. The counselors, who were all volunteers that none of us had ever met before, were also supposed to make us do assignments while we were there. That just sounded like a horrible week away to me, so I was dreading it from the moment the permission slips were handed back to the teachers. Fast forward a few days and I had already had my fair share of awful experiences. I was already chewed up by mosquitoes because I forgot to pack repellent. The bed they had me sleep in was also uncomfortable and musty as heck, just as I had anticipated. I would always wait for all the other kids to finish their shower before I got in, so I could keep a better eye on my clothes, so naturally they all made fun of me and taunted me for it. During breakfast one morning, one of the counselors was carrying a hot rack from one of the ovens that had our eggs and sausage on it, and he bumped it against my elbow, giving me a burn. He didn't even attempt to apologize. I even said something to him in case my scream of agony wasn't enough of a clue, and he actually blew the whole thing off. Something to the effect of, "Careful, hot tray," or some garbage like that. What a jerk. Probably most uncomfortable of all, I had only brought one pair of shoes with me and nothing as a backup in case it rained. There was so much rainfall the first 2 nights and we did so many activities outside despite everything being completely soaked that my shoes were absolutely waterlogged. There was no place to dry them, so it meant wet feet the whole stay there. I was completely miserable and all I wanted was to go home. I don't remember how many days into the trip we were, but this was sometime in the early afternoon before lunch. I was surprised to see that the sun was out now. While it was nice to see, I also knew what it meant. It meant we were going back outside to do more activities that I probably didn't want to participate in. I didn't want any more mosquito bites, and I certainly didn't want to wear my soaking wet shoes outside again through all the mud. We all lined up outside our cabins while the counselors brought out a bunch of boxes and set them on the wet grass. I kept thinking this was going to be another game I hated, like lawn darts or flag football or something like that. Something that would have required speed, precision, balance, and coordination, all the traits and skills that I lacked in spades. They divided us into groups, and each counselor took one group with them. My group got stuck with the idiot that burned my arm with the hot tray. Just my luck, I thought to myself. I watched completely puzzled as he drew a long, thick rope from the box and told us all to stand single file. I thought maybe this was going to be a tug-of-war contest or something. I could already see myself being dragged through the mud, face first, as the other team cheered in victory and ran a winner's lap around me. Somebody please shoot me now, I thought. After he handed the rope to all of us to hold onto, I saw him go back to the box and grab several handfuls of long strips of material. I figured they were flags to mark the center of the rope, but why was he grabbing so many of them? He handed one to each of us and said, "Okay, I'll explain what we're doing. I'm going to come around to each of you and tie the blindfold around your eyes. I need all of you to hang on to the rope and you must not let go. I'm going to lead you into the woods by pulling the rope. Just follow the way I move, stay single file, and you'll all be fine. Try to remember the directions you walked and listen to the unique sounds and scents that might help you. When we get far enough in, I'm going to walk away from you. You need to count to 100 without cheating, and then use your memory and sense to find your way back." This is like the stuff they do with people in the army. I thought this guy was kidding. Was he crazy? Did they actually do all this to the other kids? Was he really planning to drag us out into the woods, make us lost, and then force us to find our way back on our own? I kept hoping someone would laugh, but no one did. He was being serious. That sunk in as he tied the blindfold tight around my eyes and told me not to let go of the rope. After a while, I felt tension on the rope and he pulled it, and I could feel the kids in front of me walking as he pulled. This was really happening. He was actually making us do this. About 5 minutes in, my head was already hurting from how tight the blindfold was. I kept wanting to take it off or at least loosen it, but I kept thinking that maybe he was watching me. Something about this guy just creeped me out. I then felt a sharp thud against my shin as a tree stump that was directly in my path made its presence known. The pain was horrid. I could feel the blood running down my shin now. I wished I hadn't worn shorts that day. I thought maybe the counselor hated me and did it intentionally. I know that's not likely, but I couldn't help but think it. Either way, I hated him. We continued to walk. It felt like hours. The lack of sight seemed to make time crawl. I have no idea how long we walked for or how deep into the woods we had gone. By this point, I had lost count of the turns and steps we had taken. Everything felt the same after a while. He could have led me in a gigantic circle at this point, and I would never have known the difference. I was thirsty, tired, disoriented, and my shin felt like a 3-alarm fire. When was this going to end? It was then that I felt the line slack and heard him speak for the first time since we started this horrible exercise. Okay, here we are. I need the one that was closest to me to grab the rope, wind it up, and carry it back to camp. Don't take off your blindfolds until you get to 100. I'll tell you when to start counting. No cheating, guys. Don't forget to take your blindfolds back to camp with you also. Don't lose them. Is everyone ready? Okay. Count. And we did. I counted in my head while some of the other kids counted out loud. I kept hoping the counselor would get eaten by a bear. It would serve the SOB right. Stupid jerk. By the time I got to 100, I took my blindfold off and just took a few moments to look around. We looked to be pretty far in. I didn't see anything that looked familiar. I couldn't hear any water nearby, and I didn't see any roads or any sign of the cabins. Nothing but trees. I saw that most of the other kids had already started walking back by now. Some went off by themselves while others went into groups, trying to stick together and walk back by memory. I just stood there, hoping someone would come up to me and tell me to go with them. But nobody did. I was too shy to walk with any of the groups. I didn't really know any of the kids that they had grouped me with. They all weren't from my class. I just stood there as they departed, and no one seemed to care or notice. One by one, I could see their bright-colored jackets fade into the trees and vanish from view. I felt alone, but maybe even a bit relieved at the same time. I mean, the counselor was long gone, I'd hoped, and there wasn't anyone there to make fun of me. It was just me and the trees, and strangely enough, I felt okay. I stood there a long time. I don't know exactly how long. I didn't wear a watch. I thought maybe I could craft a crude sundial with some sticks if I really wanted to know, but by this time it was beginning to get overcast, and the distant rumble of thunder told me that another rainstorm was fast approaching. My shoes were muddy as heck, and soaked already. I couldn't stand the thought of getting soaked more. I stared at my bruised and bloodied shin, and it instantly brought to mind the stupid counselor. I didn't want to be caught in the rain, but it was better than seeing that guy's face again. But reluctantly, I began walking. I walked slow and deliberate. I ignored the direction I had seen the other kids walk and decided to walk by memory. After a bit of this, I didn't think I was making any progress and had likely only gotten myself even more lost. I then tried walking while keeping my eyes closed, thinking that this might make my other senses become stronger like I had seen people on TV shows do when they lose their eyesight. But this only made me trip and stumble. This went on for a while. By now, the rain was coming through the tree canopy and my face and hair were soaked. I decided to pick up the pace a little, hoping I would see some signs of the cabins, but the more frantically I walked, the more dark and unfamiliar the forest seemed to become. It was now pouring and I could feel the water seeping through my jacket. I tried calling out in hopes that one of the other kids was still close by and would hear me. Maybe one of them would know the way back and come and get me to show me the way, but no one did. I was lost. Very lost. I was also hungry. It was probably past lunchtime now. I was sure they were all eating inside by now. I kept thinking I'd see a counselor search party show up and rescue me, but they never did. There was no one. Suddenly, I had regretted my decision to venture out alone. I was blaming myself for not walking with the others. I should have gone with them. I just want to go home. Please. Just let me go home. I stared at my shin again, and the mud beneath my feet. It was a sad sight. A hopeless sight. I slowly picked my head up and turned around, thinking I could retrace my steps, when a bright pink jacket caught my eye. It was a girl, around my age, with long brown hair and pale ivory skin. She didn't look familiar, but I figured she was from one of the other classes. "Hey," she said, "are you looking for the camp?" "Yes," I said. "I got lost." "Oh, come on," she said. "I'll walk back with you. You can follow me." And so I did. I thought to myself what perfect timing she had. She must have been sent out to find me. But it seemed odd that she was alone. I thought for sure the counselors would come and get me. If they were going to send one of the other kids to get me, why wouldn't they send someone from my class? Someone that I knew. I was so happy to be getting back that I guess these things really didn't strike me as odd as they should have. But I guess that's what happens when you're overjoyed. You stop thinking of how strange certain things are. I ran my hands through my hair, feeling the soaked strands between my fingers. I said something to her like, "I am soaked. I can't believe all this rain." She just looked back at me, said nothing, and looked forward again. It was then that I noticed her face was completely dry, as was her hair. I wanted to convince myself that it was because she had her hood up earlier, but she wasn't wearing a hood. When we approached the tree line, I could make out the cabins through the trees. I stepped out into the clearing and felt the rain splashing onto my face again. I turned and looked at her. "Hey, thanks for getting me back in one piece. Are you going to come inside with me?" She just shook her head and said the first words she had spoken since we started walking. "I have to go this way," she said as she pointed back at the woods. I had no idea what she meant by that. I went inside the cabin and headed for lunch. By this time, most of the kids had finished eating. I got my food, ate fast, and headed back to our cabin so I could change my clothes. The storm outside worsened as lightning and thunder tore up the sky. The winds had also picked up, and we were told that there was now a tornado watch. At dinner, I asked around about the girl that walked with me. I asked the counselors and some of the other kids about the girl. I wanted to know her name at least, but no one seemed to know what I was talking about. I tried to describe her and her bright pink jacket, but no one seemed to know who she was. I remembered staring outside at the dark sky and the horrendous storm raging overhead, thinking she might still be out there. To this day, I have no idea who she even was. On the last day of school, as we emptied our desks, I was still looking for her. I even asked the teachers, and none of them knew the girl I had described. I am 100% convinced that that pale-skinned girl with the bright pink jacket is still inside those woods.